All right, so let's start off with your volleyball background. I mean, you and I worked a little bit together at MSU and in different little capacities around MSU. But what did you do around, the North Texas area before that? And then what's it been like since, and leading you
Getting
to
started.
your current high school situation?
Yeah. So I was actually a tennis player in college. I actually played at Midwestern State. And so I actually got my start for getting into volleyball actually was through someone we both know, Tim. He actually invited me out to a club practice once. And then Natalie was the former head coach before the current one, and she was running the Zone and Volleyball Academy in Wichita Falls. So I was introduced that way for volleyball, and then I wanted to go collegiately because I knew I wanted to stay around sports after I graduated. So talked to Natalie and got hired on there. And then once I did that,
We should note when you say hired on, you actually mean you were a volunteer.
Hired on. I was helping. I wasn't paid. Hired on. Was brought in to help. Yes.
There you go. Sure.
I got exposed to college experience. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to do that for a year. Really got a taste of a little bit of college, and decided after that I wanted to pursue college volleyball. And yeah. So sorry. What was the rest of your question? I apologize. I was about to go into my whole diatribe.
Well, where'd you go after that?
So after that, I wanted to stay in college, and through some mutual friends, there was an opportunity for me to be a GA. Natalie already had a GA at Midwestern, so that wasn't a possibility for me. So I went up to an NAIA school at Olivet Nazarene. It's an hour south of Chicago, and I got to do that for 2 years. And so different than Division II. I would say we were good, but I would just say the level was a little bit different. It was a smaller school. We were a private school, much like I believe where you are. You're a private school, correct?
Yep.
Yeah. So, different recruiting budgets, different talent, but just different level of play, different area. So I got to see a lot there, and then decided that I wanted to pursue getting into D1. I think a lot of players and coaches are like, oh yeah, D1's the best. So I kind of wanted to see what that level was like. And I had an opportunity, fortunately, to through friends that know friends, and my network is pretty small. So I got to go down to Alabama State, where I currently am in Montgomery with Penny Lucas White. And I got to do that for 2 years. And so then unfortunately this pandemic hit in the spring, and I was on my way out. So thankfully I had an opportunity to get a job here at Edgewood Academy. It's a small private school, about 15 minutes outside of Montgomery. And so that's where I am now.
All right. So what motivated the high school thing? Because you talked about, hey, I want to give this college thing a try. Obviously been at a couple of schools. Had you started shifting your thought to high school, or was this just an opportunity that came up?
Well, I think the first thing, it was financial reasons. A lot of colleges got hit really hard. And so, I remember being on, Zoom meetings. Hey, we have to cut this. We can't do this. You have to be here. Everyone's working from home. So colleges are trying to save budgets. And I knew the writing was on the wall. My job was not, I wasn't a full-time a salaried assistant. So it kind of just met where I needed to not only move on, but I needed to find something where I could get paid. High school really wasn't on my radar. Edgewood actually reached out to Coach White, and she forwarded it to me about, hey, this might be an opportunity. Just kind of, get on your feet, stay in volleyball. And so I reached out to them, and they actually already had the offer on the table to somebody. And they gave it the weekend, and they reached back out to me on a Monday. I was like, hey, would you still want to come for an interview? And I said, sure. And even at that point, I was like, yeah, I'll have a conversation. But I wasn't really interested in going the high school route. Got up there, toured the school, and had the interview, and they offered me the job the next day. And I liked where I was. And I've been to a private school as a student, but I'd never really coached at one. And I've helped out with teams before, but I'd never been the head coach. I looked at it as an opportunity to kind of stay in the game and stay with it and kind of segue into maybe my next spot. And I knew it didn't have to be permanent, so that's why I took the job here. Now that I've taken it, because even my current players like, oh, how long are you going to stay? Because I mean, everyone read my resume. Oh gosh, you're in college, because this is a small private school. They've probably never had a college coach before, but I think what I've been able to look at from the places that I've been, the different levels of college and now high school, what I've come to realize is that every level offers different things, pros and cons. Every level does. D2 and AIA, maybe it's not as strict. D1, especially different levels. I mean, I wasn't mid-major or Power 5, but I mean, I was at a school where, you were grinding in season. And so now to come to a private school where, I have weekends, like I don't have to go recruit on weekends, or I don't have to play matches Friday, Sunday. My Monday through Friday, Wednesdays and Sundays were off because it's private school. So it's like, oh, I get a weekend now. What is that? So it's definitely kind of helped kind of further along what I really want to end up doing. Because eventually I would like to find a spot where I can be for 10 years, 15 years, not jump around every 2 or 3.
Right.
But I do enjoy where I am. It's different, but I mean, I enjoy it. I'm thankful I have it.
Okay. And you're not a teacher.
Well, I'm not, I teach electives. If that counts. Yes.
What does that mean?
So I teach a computer class. I teach an intro to coding, and then I'm going to be teaching a speech in the spring. Gotcha.
Okay. So you're kind of like adjunct faculty sort of thing. Like if you were thinking about a college situation, you're not full-time faculty, but you're
right. Like I have coaching and then I teach like a class on the side type thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it's kind of like what I did when I was at Midwestern as the assistant coach.
Yeah. Right.
My primary job was to be the assistant coach, but I also had to teach a class per semester.
Well, and to be fair, I don't really look at teaching PE as teaching, but like I have like 3 classes.
You got to be really careful on this.
I'm the PE teacher, so like I have K3, K4, K5 in first grade, and I'm about to have 6th through 8th when I get out of season. So I mean, I have all the kids. It's just, I mean, more so it's like fitness. So I don't know. I mean, I guess you could say I teach that too. So.
Every PE teacher out there is just like, oh, all right.
I'm not trying to bash. It's new
who is this guy?
For me.
All right. So when did you obviously everything with the COVID happened in the spring. So when did you land this job?
So I got this job in June, and then I started in, actually I hired at the end of May, beginning of June, and I started like official off-season workouts in late June, early July.
Okay. I can only imagine what that must have been like with COVID and trying to get everything up and running. And
yeah, well, we didn't do any volleyball stuff. Yeah. We had to work out in the gym. We had to space out. So yeah, just figuring out different ways to like workouts and being mindful of like cleaning stuff and equipment and doing stuff outdoors. And this was, I mean, it definitely was strange because, you have kids that come in like, oh my gosh, how are you? And they see everybody and they want to, hug and touch and all that stuff. And so just trying to be mindful of that and still get a good workout in and work hard and be mindful of what's actually going on, because it's really hard to fight something you can't see and to be mindful of it. But I think the kids did a good job given the circumstance. I mean, they were just really excited to have a coach and to see their friends again because they'd been out since March.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, getting 20, 25 kids in the gym and trying to find workouts and space. So, but I think we did well given the circumstance. Nobody got sick, so that was good.
Okay. Are you covering varsity and JV?
Yes. So I have a roster of 15 kids for JV, and then I have 12 for varsity.
All right. And do you have an assistant, or is it just you?
Just me.
All right.
On the show, yes.
Do you work them out together, or do you have separate trainings for them?
So over the summer, I worked them out together because we were just doing conditioning. Mm-hmm. Once we got into volleyball in mid-July, we started going into hour-and-a-half sessions. So I do JV first, and then I do the varsity afterwards. And then during the school year, we have 6th period for JV, and then 7th period and after schools for varsity.
Gotcha. Just out of curiosity, because in the South things are a little bit different when seasons start. When does high school? When does the season start in Alabama?
So season started for me in what was it, August? Well, no, that was preseason, and then like official season started like late August, early September.
Okay. All right, that's a little bit later than like it was in Texas, or at least North Texas,
Yeah.
where it's what, about the 10th, somewhere around August 10th,
Yeah.
usually when the high school season starts.
Yeah. We were a little bit after that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So you're at the same time a first-time head coach and a first-time high school coach. So what was your thought process like when the reality of your situation kind of got hit after you said, yeah, I'll do it?
Yeah. Well, I think when I got into season, like it really didn't hit over workouts because we're just conditioning. So I'm not really teaching volleyball at that point. But I think when we got into like school started, I'm having to run two different teams. I'm having to coach different levels because my JV is nowhere near my varsity. We had tryouts. So I'm not like, I didn't really cut anybody because, you want all the kids you can. You're at a high school. You want these kids to play and to love the game and then play other sports. So I think the first week, and then by the first game when the parents are like, oh my gosh, we have to win, it really kind of hit like, oh, okay, they take it really seriously here. Okay, I didn't think it was that bad, but okay. And just like little stuff like, hey, coach, what time do we have to be there? And, you take little things, you kind of, sometimes you assume like, oh, like, when you're dealing with college athlete, like they should know, yeah, you got to show up 15 minutes prior, or, you think you said it once and that's enough. But, you have ranging from 6th grade to seniors. So you have to make sure you're very clear and, the times you want them there, what they're wearing, what days we're playing, even though you maybe sent out a schedule and you have it posted in the locker room and you have all these things. Some kids, especially younger ones, aren't going to remember. So just realizing that every decision is mine because I don't have an assistant. It's me, and kids are going to ask and parents are going to ask. And that kind of hit the first week when we had our game and practices like, oh, I don't get to just, nope, I don't have an assistant to run that drill. That's me. Okay, gotcha. So I gotta plan everything and organize everything. So, and I like being an assistant. I've been an assistant in all the college stops I had. So I love assisting. I think the qualities that I bring to the table are good for an assistant role. But when I got here, I kind of realized I do like, I'm not obsessed with it, but I did like kind of being in control of certain things. I liked being able to run my practice the pace that I wanted and what things I wanted to do. I liked being able to run the conditioning. I'm not a certified strength trainer, but I believe I know enough to help kids from 6 through 12 to get fitter. And so I liked being able to do that and be able to observe that. So I have enjoyed being a head coach, but there's some days where I wish I had maybe one other person to let him have something or not have to answer a question from a parent or a player at 9:00 at night. But no, I enjoy it. It's good.
What sort of expectations did they give you when they hired you?
So apparently this was a thing, and I didn't know this, but apparently Edgewood has won JV state, which I didn't know that was a thing, has won JV state the past 7 years in a row. And so my parent night, when I meet and greet at the parent night, several of the parents came up to me like, Coach, just so you know, we got to win JV state this year. We've won it 7 years in a row. I was like, okay, that's a thing. All right. Yeah. Well, welcome to you too. Thank you. And Edgewood has been historically pretty good. We're 2A in AISA in the private school of Alabama. So we're not the smallest. We're not the biggest because I think it goes up to 4A for private school, 4A, 5A, something like that. But they've been historically pretty good. And I know they lost a lot of seniors the previous year, so they didn't really know what to expect. They didn't have a coach until late summer, so a lot of the parents and players were panicking. So coming in, their expectation was we want to win. We want to win state. We want to be the best team. We want to win JV state. So walking in, it was we need to win. That was the first and foremost. So.
But they didn't tell you that when they hired you. They let you find that out.
Yes. It was the headmaster and AD said, yeah, you got a great group of kids and the parents are great. And, we talked about the difference between college and high school. And then I get to that meet and greet and, the parents like, oh, if you ever need anything, but by the way, we've won the past such and such. And yeah, so that was a fun little introduction of welcome to Edgewood.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting how often there's a little bit of a bait and switch that happens when you get hired as a coach. where they tell you, okay, these are the expectations, and a lot of them are pretty formulaic.
Yeah.
And then you get in the job and it's, oh, by the way, you also have to do this other thing, and these are your expectations, and those expectations aren't always necessarily aligned with what you think should be expected.
Right. Case in point, like for JV, which, I mean, to be fair, my headmaster and AD weren't, I mean, they sat me down and said, hey, we will always support you. If a parent comes up to you and says something about, whether you lose a game or, you had a rough match or they're talking about playing time, we will always back you. So I had that backing in the beginning. Parents are the ones that want to have certain expectations, like, my kid should start, or we should play, or we should win. And so, yeah, I remember talking to some of the parents once I got a little bit in the season, and we had our cleanup day. I think we had a cleanup day on a Saturday when we had just started. And I remember telling some of the parents that were talking about JV, and I said, hey, my expectations, I want JV to get better. I don't necessarily care too much if we win. And that was a shock to some of the parents, but because I want, yes, winning is fun, but if you're not learning or you're not enjoying the game or getting better, then I feel like I've done a disservice to those players that are in 6th and 7th grade, where winning probably isn't the biggest thing in life. So I told some of those parents that asked me, like, I want to win in varsity, but JV, I want them to learn and to develop. So if we lose it, we may lose a game, and we've already lost twice. So I'm still here, but just wanting to reiterate to them, I want them to learn. I want them to enjoy the game, and I want them to work hard, and we can worry about winning when we get to 9th, 10th, 11th grade. And if they want to go on to college, and help them with that. But 6th grade, I don't really worry too much if you win in 6th grade. So,
winning should be a byproduct of doing good things.
Yes.
Otherwise, not the reason for doing things. Yeah. Do you have a lot of kids who also play club, or is this primarily school sports is how it works for them?
So in recent years, like part of the reason why Edgewood got a lot better is because the AD told me that a lot of the kids started to play club. And I think there's, if I remember, I don't know how many clubs are in Montgomery. I think there's, to my knowledge, I know there's 2 that I know of. There might be a 3rd one. And so most of my kids on varsity either have or currently do play club, which definitely helps. JV, the 6th and 7th grade, not so much, because they're just kind of getting into the game. But my 8th and 9th grade, they've either played once or they're wanting to play this year. So yeah, I would say out of the 25 kids, 27 kids I have, I would probably say at least 18 to 20 play club or have.
Okay.
So yeah, right. that definitely helps for the maintaining skill. Yes.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So you walk into the situation, obviously you're doing your strength and conditioning, you're getting ready for tryouts and tryouts.
Yes.
I'm guessing you got some ideas on how you want to run practices and where you want to set your priorities for training. What did those look like when you first got started? And how did they look? How did they look like 2 weeks later after you've been through those first 3 sessions and had a chance to see what's working, what's not working, or maybe everything's working?
Yeah. So going into tryouts, I realized that, like, for my varsity was really easy because I only had, I think, 12 or 13 kids try out. So it's like, sweet, I don't have to cut anybody. It's 12 kids. Great. So varsity was pretty easy. JV, I had a lot of JV kids come out, probably, I want to say 18, 19 kids. And I only have 1 court. So I knew I didn't want to run more than maybe like 14, 15 tops, because that gets kind of hard to get everyone the touches that they need to get better. And some kids are on the sideline, and then you have to be mindful of the level of skill from your 6th grade all the way through your 9th grade. So we did for the tryout that I had, we did a lot of just kind of ball handling stuff individually. Then we did maybe some partner stuff. I did a little bit of play just based on the fact that the JV that I had, it was going to look rough in the beginning. So we did a little bit of play, just kind of see what it looked like. But so I had to cut a few kids, and then so introduction to Edgewood. After cutting a few kids, of course, parents reach out to me or my headmaster and ask why I didn't take their kid. And, oh, my kid played club, or, my kid did this. And I said, I don't know anybody. I just had a tryout. Maybe she had a bad day. So, so once I had my team, for JV, I only have 6th period. So it's an hour. By the time they get out of class and get into the gym, they get changed, nets up, we probably have maybe 45 minutes total. So my practices have actually been pretty consistent throughout the season, which is like most of my practices most of the time. I mean, there have been practices where I usually just do a quick warm up, and then we'll go into like either a butterfly or a modified butterfly, and we'll do that for a majority of the time, and then maybe some serving. And then by that time, they got to stretch, change, and then get to their 7th period class. As I've progressed with my JV, we played a little bit more at the end, maybe like 10 or 15 minutes. So we'll do a quick warm up, maybe a serve and pass or some partner stuff over the net, and then play a little bit. But my practices really haven't changed too much, just because I only have 45 minutes. So I want it to really be skill focused and skill based. With varsity, I would say a mainstay of my practices, because I'm not the biggest. I do a lot of serve and pass, or some sort of serve and or pass in my practice. So we'll either start with like a butterfly, or, speedball, or, a serve receive with just, basic like a setter and 3 passers and some serving just to kind of warm up. And then, from there, usually we'll do like maybe like some partner stuff over then, maybe some sequence stuff. So like pass, 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 that sort of thing with either 2s or 3s. And then maybe like the last 20 minutes of my practice, I'll play. Because again, I really want to be good at serve and pass, just because I'm small. And there are teams that I've played that are bigger and they're a lot more athletic. But I would definitely say, because I do so much serving and passing, that we're able to beat those teams because we're so much better technically than they are. And as season has progressed, we're now starting to, so my offense has been pretty basic. I run like a regular outside ball, like a 4, I don't know what, 4 or 5, whatever you want to call it, and then a 1 in the middle, and then a 9 behind. The past 2 weeks, my team and I have kind of sat down like, okay, like what do we want to start running beyond this? Because I know some kids are going to be ready for club and they want to play in college, and some of the teams we play aren't the best. So, hey, I can practice during the match. So we started to run a little bit of different combinations and free ball stuff, and we started to spend a little bit more time on connections lately in practice. But yeah, I still serve and pass a lot in a majority of my practices for varsity.
Okay. I will tell people probably to the dying day of my coaching, serving and passing is still hugely fundamental. I don't know if this, I don't know if this drives people crazy or not. There are sometimes some indications that it does. But my college teams have always done a lot of serving, lots of serving. And I've gotten to the point where, actually my pro team, when I was coaching in Sweden, we did a lot of serving. Whether this is causal or not, it's hard to judge. But we were one of the, certainly, if not the top, then one of the top serving teams in the league at that time. And at MSU, my last year there, again, one of the top serving teams in the league. And to your point, it's for any team, it's the thing you can control. It's the one thing you can control.
Right.
So why not work on it to the extent that you can make it even better and better and better?
Right. Well, and for me, it's almost like a necessity. I don't have, my tallest kid is 5'10", 5'11". Yeah. So one of my outsides, one of my outsides is killing it. She's never played front row before. She was a libero last year. I think she's 5'7", maybe on a good day. And then my other outside is 5'5", 5'4". So, I have tiny pins on the outside. Mm-hmm. I have one middle that is not really a middle, but she can block. And so for our level of play, she can play middle. Right. And then, so my tallest player is 5'10". So, and I have some athletes, but they're all small. So I don't really spend a lot of time on, yes, we'll do some connection work, especially now that we're trying to run like a little more advanced of the system. But some of these teams I go up against, they have hitters that are, some of them are 6 feet. Maybe the whole front line is 5'10". So they're athletic and they can hit. Yeah. But So I got to keep them off the front row because if they get there, I'm going to be in a tough spot. So, I mean, I would definitely say hands down, we are the best serving team in 2A, 3A, probably 4A. I mean, because we do it a lot and we're good and we pass really well. And that allows us to either score on the first ball or outwork our opponent because we have better ball control than they do because we have to because we're small. So.
Right. Yeah. And the other thing that's really become a focus for me that wasn't necessarily when I was early in my career, but over the years, it made more intuitive sense to me the more I thought about it was I don't like doing receiving drills where the servers are just there to facilitate the drill, just to put balls in for the passers. I want my servers serving for a purpose. So I want them to be challenging the servers or either maybe not in terms of, hey, I'm going back here, I'm trying to get an ace, but hey, I'm going back here because I'm working on hitting zone 1 or I'm working on hitting the seam 5-6 or my short serve or whatever it is, so that they have something. If I'm ever in a servers and passers situation, which obviously happens quite a bit, that okay, the passers are obviously working on whatever they're working on. Maybe they're working on their footwork that day or their platform angle that day or whatever, and normally they're getting scored for balls to target and all that sort of stuff. What are the servers getting scored for? A lot of people will say, well, they're getting scored for aces or out of system balls or something like that, which is fine as long as there's other stuff going on. Because the two things that you tend to see if the servers don't have a specific thing to work with is either they make it too easy, just because everyone wants to get out of the drill and move on to something more interesting. Because, I mean, to be honest, serving and passing isn't the most exciting thing in the world. We all know that. We know we have to do it, but we also know it's not the most exciting thing. Or you get the occasional kid who just decides, I'm just going to go back and smash every single ball as hard as I can, just because.
I get scored for aces. I'm going to get them.
Yeah. And you're also going to get 50% errors. So it's, it doesn't really end up working for anybody as it works out. So that's just, and I don't know if this is something that we all are amalgams of the things that we see and experience and go through. So I'm sure some of these thoughts came in from some different places. And every time I go to a professional gym or a high level gym, the vast majority of what they're doing is initiated with a serve, whether it's a competitive drill or non-competitive drill. Like, I've spent 3 preseasons now with my friend Ruben, 2 in Brazil, Germany, and 1 in Hungary. And his morning sessions with his teams are mostly serve and pass, and fairly simple sort of stuff, nothing too complicated. But then the afternoon sessions are largely, okay, it might be like a 4-ball sequence where unscored, where it could be, okay, a receive ball plus some kind of transition ball plus some kind of, free ball situation, whatever he wants to do that day based on what he's working on. But there's a heavy element of serve receive because the side out game is so important.
Yeah.
And of course, that in the men's game, they're siding out at 65 to 70%. Just not where the women's game in college is traditionally at, but you can have aspirations.
Yeah, right.
Do you even actually? I'd be wondering in high school. Do you even have a sense of what your side out percentage is for your team?
I don't, because I don't really keep that stat. So because I'm coaching, I have my setters keep stats of just the game in general. Mm-hmm. I mean, I probably could, but I would say just based on the level of my play and the level of teams I face, it's not that siding out isn't important. It's just I'm not really facing the level of competition where it matters, like, hey, what rotation am I getting stuck in? Or, I mean, we're going down to basic stuff. So like one of the things I'm teaching my setters now is, hey, if you get stuck in rotation more than 2 balls, change it. And so we're learning how to change the rotation, change the service deep pattern, change what we're running. I honestly can't tell you what my side out percentage is. I just know that, I mean, again, what the eye test, hey, if we pass well, we get a good set, we're most likely going to score. But yeah, just teaching basic stuff, especially one of my setters is a freshman. So, learning like when to dump, how to, what rotation should we run out of this serve receive pattern, when to change it, what set to set. So I definitely could do a better job of tracking that. But again, going from college to high school, I wouldn't say, especially my level where I am, it's probably not as important a statistic as maybe at a higher level of play.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're talking about more gross detail, gross things that you're big picture things that you're working on versus the finer points when you get to the higher level.
Yeah.
And what you talk about switching up serve receive and things like that. It amazes me how many coaches don't incorporate that into what they do. It's like, hey, you give up 2 balls, make them do something else, especially if they're targeting somebody.
Well, I can say I used to be one of those coaches. I know I did. Because you just get in a zone. You're like, well, this is how we serve receive. This is where this person goes, and you line up 3 across, or you like. It was probably until recently that I learned, oh gosh, you can change it, and you need to change it, and especially my last stop with Coach White. She was adamant. If you lose 2, you got to change it. Change something. Do something. I would say, until recently, I used to be, well, this is how we serve receive in this rotation. We just got to get better at passing. Well, not necessarily. Maybe that player's off, and you just need to give them a different look, or give them a break, or give your outside a chance not to have to touch the first ball. So just changing the flow, and especially at my level of play, just by changing rotation, I don't know how many serve receive errors I get from the other team just by switching it up. Yeah. I don't have that stat, but just by slowing the game down or changing it or throwing them off, I have so many missed serves just because they're like, what are they doing? So
and I used it when I was coaching in England. We used it at MSU. The hardest part at that level was if the kids aren't used to doing it, if it's not a natural instinct, they won't think it.
Right.
Because they'll like you were talking about it. If they're just like, okay, this is how you do. We're in rotation 1. This is how you line up for serve receive in rotation 1. Yeah. And it's the same thing everybody does. Because let's face it, most people do what everybody does. Mm-hmm. So if you don't kind of snap them, hey, there are other options here. You could pull that person back. You could shift this over. You could, it's just one of those game IQ sort of things that has to develop. And you're totally right, especially at the lower levels. If you change things, you change what it looks like for the server. And it might freak them out because now they can't serve the person that they wanted to serve, or they have to serve them in a more narrow part of the court or whatever. And of course, there's probably confirmation bias to a lot of this. Hey, we changed it up so they missed their serve. Well, okay, let's do the numbers. See if that's actually true or not.
I don't have the stats to prove that, but I definitely, based on recent memory, I feel good about my when I change it up, they miss. So, or we get a better first ball. So I would definitely say that.
Well, and you kind of allude to, there's also 2 sides to it. There's the one side of trying to give the other team something that they have to adjust to, but it also shakes your own team up. It says, okay, hey, we're going to give you less part of the court, or we know we're going to make it more difficult for them. So they feel like they're actually doing something. They're active, because serve receive can tend to be, can make you, especially if things are not going well, you can really kind of get shelled in and get really defensive and tight and feel helpless, because it's like, oh, okay, here we go again.
Yeah. Here's that rotation. Oh gosh.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
No, you want to be the team doing that to other teams, not the one on the receiving end.
Yeah.
All right. So we talked about the training stuff. Obviously now, and you've done this at the club level before, so doing lineups and substitutions is not like something completely brand new to you. But what's it been like as the high school coach, for a varsity team that's expected to win, maybe not win state like the JV, but to be successful, to have that pressure of, I need to make sure I get my lineup decisions right. I need to, are the parents going to yell at me because Susie isn't playing enough, or any of that sort of stuff?
Yeah. I would say I would say there's pressure when we play like the good teams because, I mean, the variety of opponent that we play is, I mean, we can play either teams that are not so great, teams that are average, and teams that can match us.
Mhm.
So I would say there's definitely more pressure with like a Glenwood. They're a 3A school that I guess played in last year's state final, so they're good. Macon East, another school, a 3A school that we play. They've been historically good. So playing those better teams in 2A or 3A, definitely there's more pressure there. I would say honestly, based on just the overall season that we've had, because I know I'm the best team, and I don't mean to like toot my horn, but because I am the best team, there isn't as much pressure because I know that based on how we train and based on what I know the other schools look like, if we do, X, Y, and Z, we'll most likely win. And so it's mostly a pressure of like, hey, did I get enough people in? Like, did every player touch the court? If I'm destroying the opponent, did every player touch the court? And did I get them all in? Did their parents get to see them? Because that's something I learned at the club level is, parents don't really care too much for the most part in my experience. They don't really care too much how much they play necessarily. You definitely have those parents that do, but most parents care that at least their daughter touches the floor. At least she got out there. At least you got to see your kid serve or play a rotation. She did her job. She was a part of it. And so I've definitely had to be more mindful of not necessarily, is my lineup right, but did everyone get in lineup and do I have them tied to the right person? Are they getting to develop the way that I want them to, especially in JV? So if I'm playing a JV match and, we're destroying the opponent, I make sure to get every kid in. And I've even lost sets because of it, because I want to give them a chance to learn. And then with varsity, it's giving some kids that maybe don't get a lot of playing time when we play better opponents, getting them in, getting them some experience, and just working with different lineups when I have the chance. But yeah, the pressure only really mounts when it's like a really good team, which those are unfortunately not as many as I would like. But yeah, the pressure is not really as much as it would be if every opponent was really good.
Might have to check back with you once it comes to the tournament time.
well, yeah, and see, and that's the thing about high school is I knew going into it, parents were going to be much more involved, and they like to have their comments and say their piece, and so there are certain games where some parents will walk up to me and be like, "Hey, coach, you ready? You nervous?" No, should I be?
I wasn't. I am now.
Yeah, we got to win tonight. Oh, you can't. Or like, because I told one of my parents how I do JV, she's like, you don't get to do that for tonight. You got to win. You got to play to win. I was like, I play to win. I just play my way. What? So yeah, I definitely have to handle parent expectations more so than players. Cause I mean, players get nervous, but parents, they want you to know what they're thinking too. Like, we got to win tonight. It's like, okay, great. Thanks for your support. But, and I think I've been able to, I think relationships helps too, because it's not that, I mean, yes, I want to win, and yes, we train to win, but I think them understanding kind of my philosophy in terms of how I train and how I play, I think has definitely helped them kind of breathe and understand that it's not that it's okay to lose, but it's not the end of the world if we lose. Because my varsity is really good, but it's really been more so a process with the JV, because some of those players and parents probably take it a little too seriously, and just reminding them, hey, it's a learning process. You got varsity ahead of you. It's really okay. So.
Yeah. Before I get to this other question, what's in your experience has been the difference between the juniors' parents and the high school parents?
Juniors, like for junior varsity?
No. Juniors as in club.
Club. Okay.
And how they want to interact with you versus what it's like for the high school team.
I think the biggest difference is high school parents just have more access because they pick them up from school every day, so they're probably going to see you. And if you just had a game the previous day, or or maybe you had a practice and their kid came home and told them about it, maybe they might say something. I think with club, you only see them for practices sometimes 2-3 times a week for a span, and most of the time they're sitting in the stands talking with each other, so they don't really bother you too much. Mm-hmm. Or it's an expectation like, hey, you don't really talk to the coaches, and there's a 24-hour rule, that type thing. So I would say the biggest thing is just access. I mean, I see most of these parents 5 days a week, sometimes 6 days a week. I'd say another thing is they pay for this, so when you're in club, you're paying for that sport specifically.
Right.
And then in high school, you're paying for, well, I'm at a private school, so you're paying for an education. So you're not necessarily paying for me to have your kid on the team. So you have a say, but you don't have as much say as, say, a club. No, I'm paying for this. This is what I want. This is what you promised me. So there's a different financially in terms of the ties to that as well. Yeah. But overall, but in terms of just the conversations, they're pretty similar. I would say, I mean, the fact that we're winning and the fact that we're good and the fact that they have a coach, because they didn't have a coach for months and they weren't sure what was going to happen. I think that's kind of eased the transition. I mean, I haven't really had too many issues with parents or players or someone not getting enough playing time, thankfully. I mean, I know that probably, if that were to happen, I start losing. I mean, that would probably come up, but yeah, those would be the differences with club and high school.
All right. And you mentioned that at certain clubs, maybe a lot of clubs, there are rules for parent interaction with coaches.
Right.
It can't be within 24 hours. You can't talk to them after a match, et cetera. Do you have any of that with the school?
So the headmaster and our AD really, this mostly comes from the headmaster, but they really pushed that because we want to teach our kids from the academic side of personal responsibility, especially as you're older, that they need to handle it. So they need to talk to their coach. They need to talk to their teacher. They really promote, having the kid talk to the coach and or teacher first. So that's the first step. The second step, if the parent still isn't satisfied, then they call a meeting, and it's the parent, the player, and the coach. And then the third, after that, then they meet with the AD and the headmaster. So there's a progression, but we really push just in general as a school of that the players. So for my players, that they talk to me. So I mean, I have group texts with both teams. I don't really talk to parents unless it's something like, so-and-so player has an orthodontist appointment, or it's something scheduling wise. But outside that, I don't really handle if it's a playing question or if it's a issue with someone on the team. Like most of the time we push the players to talk to me about that. Parents, just because they have access, they're going to say their piece and, oh, hey, great job, coach, or, oh, what happened there? Or, they're just going to say that when they have access to me. So.
Well, it sounds like you haven't had the, why are you playing that girl question come up, or have you?
Not in that form. It's been, I was really surprised when you played her there. Because, yeah, so for example, one of my middles, again, these parents and players know each other. They've been at Edgewood since, gosh, they were probably kindergarten, most of them anyway. So, this is a bubble that I'm walking into. And after a dinner one time after a match, one of the parents said, yeah, I was so surprised when you played that girl at middle, because she just doesn't play middle. She doesn't strike me as someone that plays middle. And the same thing when you made your outside, from a libero and outside. I was like, well, okay, well, thanks for your vote of confidence, but I believe in my players, and I have to leave it at that because I don't want to explain why I put them there. But in the case of my outside, my outside is, she's athletic. She's really good just technically. She's a great passer, great server. She's small, but she was never given the chance to hit, probably because they had bigger hitters, I hope, in the previous years. But based on the makeup of my team, I wanted an athlete, and she's an athlete, and she's skilled, and I gave her a shot, and she's kind of just owned it. So part of it is just, hey, trial and error. The other part is, oh yeah, you look great, coach. Well, I don't know. I just put her in the spot because sometimes you just got to, make stuff work. So I haven't really been questioned. Just again, I'm not losing. I'm not getting whooped. So I definitely feel like I had those questions early on, like, hey, why did so-and-so make varsity and my kid didn't make it? Or why are you playing her? Why are you playing her in this spot? But it hasn't really been a thing just because, I hope the kids are enjoying it. I get good responses from parents. So I hope that means I'm doing a good job. But
did the school give you any guidelines in terms of the tryouts? Like, we need some sort of objective assessment, or did they kind of just leave it to you to do it?
It was left to me with the one caveat of make sure that you got to think about teams down the road. So like, next year, what is it going to look like? So if you cut Susie and she's in 7th grade, just know that, well, maybe your 6th graders, they're not that many. If you only have 2 6th graders and you cut the 1 7th grader that's there, well, maybe you're not going to have that big of a class, so your JV team's going to be small, which feeds your varsity. Yeah. So being mindful of, not just, I want to take the best, however many players I get, but I don't really get to pick from a bunch of people. So I have to be mindful of, okay, I'm going to have to train some kids, and I'm going to have to bite the bullet sometimes in terms of maybe taking a sixth grader or a seventh grader, or maybe even a freshman that isn't very good, but if they can get better, at least that gives me another body in practice and maybe potentially a good athlete later down the road when I might need them with a smaller team. So that was the main one.
Yeah. Just out of curiosity, how big is the school?
I think for registration, I think we had 225 kids.
Okay. So roughly half girls, or is it?
I would say so. I would say it's pretty split. Yeah. Roughly half and half.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, I mean, obviously not a huge number of girls to pick.
Right.
Especially when you spread it out all of those over all those age groups.
Well, and that's 225, and that's including K4 through fifth. So like JV starts at sixth, so I don't really have kids below that. So that's even a smaller number. So now I have maybe 50 kids, maybe 60 on a good year. So if they all come out.
That would be one of those experiences of, what do I do now? If they all, and hey, that's one of the risk of being a good program at a small school is everybody wants to be associated with volleyball, because volleyball wins the state championship. So now you've got twice as many kids trying out as you would normally. And okay, well, now I have to make cuts, and now I have to make people unhappy. I actually, when I interviewed Tom Turco, who's I think won 19 or maybe now 20 state titles in Massachusetts with Barnstable High School. We were talking about this cut thing, and he's been fortunate enough that he has the credibility of having won all these state titles, so that when he cuts a kid, it's because he knows this kid is not up to the caliber of the team that needs to be there to win state titles. And there's really, I mean, who's going to argue with him? Right. You can bring all the parents around you want, but hey, this guy's been coaching here for I don't know how many years. He wins. He knows what it takes to win. He knows what kind of athletes he needs. And that's just sorry. Yeah. Go play club and maybe get better and try it again next year.
Well, and I definitely feel like having been in the college game before I got here gave me a little bit better of a leg to stand on if I had. I mean, I cut some kids for JV, but I definitely have something to stand on when I say why I cut your kid or why she's not playing. It's not just, he doesn't like her. Well, I mean, I have coached and and here's the reason why. And I do care about your kid. And this is the reason why I made that decision. And it's not just, again, I'm not just filling in for, as a softball coach. And no, I've actually coached this. I'm experienced with this. And a lot of parents understood that going in. And so I think that's also kind of abated some of those potential issues that might come up.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always interesting to have the conversations at the beginning of the year where you're talking philosophy and expectations, and the playing time is inevitably an aspect of that. Hey, are you prepared to do whatever the team requires? If that means that you're on the bench or you're playing in a different position or whatever sacrifice might have to come up. And everybody's really eager at the beginning of the year when, it's all new and shiny and fun.
Right.
But then later on, when maybe they're not playing as much as they have played before, or they expected to play, or they've had to change positions, or, they're hearing from, the worst case is the kid is completely fine, but his mom and dad yapping because they don't know what's going on. They think they know what's going on, but they really don't.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say, to that point of having just kind of, the player buy-in and coming into a season, I think the biggest challenge that I faced on that front is walking into my team having basically two teams on the varsity. So it was basically like an even split. You had half the kids that, were about it and, we want to work hard. We want to win state. We want to play in college, some of those kids. And then you had the other half where, we want to be associated. We want to have fun. We like each other in this group. And it's okay that they work hard. We just kind of go along to get along type thing. And again, walking into a new situation, I would structure my practices and kind of mix them together and kind of, work to address it without directly saying something about it. But it kind of reached a point maybe a few weeks ago where it just had reached a breaking point of just causing a rift in the team, and I had to address it. And I think ever since I addressed it, it's been much better in terms of just team cohesion. I mean, the team works so much harder together. Now, those players that were in the group where, they didn't like to work hard, it's not that they massively changed their mindset, but they are meeting me where my expectation is of what it means to work hard, what it means to be on this team. They are giving me more effort and better effort than what they were in the beginning. I think the side of the team that before I addressed it that, love to work hard and we're all about it, I think they're understanding what it means to be a team, so where you don't just discard or disregard the person that you feel is not as good as you or doesn't work as hard as you. You have to bring them along some way, somehow, because some of these kids want to play in college, and some of these kids, hey, they just want to hang out with their best friend. Right. And so for me, that's been a huge learning experience in terms of how to address that and bring a team together where, yeah, we all want to win state, but maybe we don't all want to play in college, and maybe we don't really want to play after this year. Maybe we're just playing because we have to or we want to, or it's because my best friend comes and watches the games and I get to be in the paper, whatever reason it is. Yeah. That's probably been my biggest learning experience, is how to bring that team cohesion together in this particular situation.
Yeah, and that's a different dynamic than you get, say, with a club team. Right. Where if you're going to play in a club team, beyond maybe the early years when your parents are trying to get you to try new stuff, whether you like it or not. When you cut it to the high school point, you're motivated to, you like volleyball. You want to play volleyball. Mm-hmm. Now, your level may be, here or there, but you know what it's all about. And, everybody's kind of in a similar sort of situation. Not that doesn't create any sort of drama at all, because we know it does. Yeah. But when you're in high school, the dynamic is different because you've got these different situations. Some kids do want to go on. Some kids really are into it for the sport of volleyball. Other kids have other like social motivations, and so it's more a blend trying to make it all work than more of the homogeneous situation of juniors. Yeah. Well, and I think it's. And I think going into the, club versus high school debate and, which one's better and that sort of thing that kind of goes on in the coaching world, I think for me now getting to be a part of the high school situation, I get to see firsthand the value of being on a high school team. It's that you have different motivations. You have to work with different people. You're not all there for the same reason. Maybe the same reason as state, but if that's all that you have in common, you've got to learn and figure out a way to work together where, as I told my team, you don't have to like each other, but you have to develop a relationship that where you're respectful and we all have the same standard and we're all going to meet that standard the best that we can together and not just go off because, well, I don't feel like it today or I want this. And so it provides a different experience than, say, like you said, in club players, generally they all want the same thing in terms of college. And so there's a different motivation. There are more similarities than differences. It's an easier time of setting that team up because a lot of kids, nowadays with club, they can go kind of where they want and they can kind of make their own teams. If they don't like the club that they were at before, they can get their own coach. So, I mean, it's an easier setup in club. In high school, sometimes like me, I just get what I get and have to make it work. So yeah, exactly. Yeah. To your point about kind of that motivation, everybody being on the same page, but having to deal with the stuff underneath it. When I was in England, the second year with the women's team, where the big push for the whole group, the whole year was, we want to go to Edinburgh to be able to play in final eights and do all that. And it was the thing that the team wanted from the beginning of the year, and everything we did was to work toward that, and it worked out really well. But I had a conversation with our club captain, our team captain, a few weeks later, because they were playing in this other tournament that was after the university season took place, just a regional tournament. And we'd had a training session. And one of her teammates was, probably still is, quite an opinionated person and not shy about sharing those opinions. And, sometimes those people can get a little grating. I think we've all been there. And so I was walking with the captain. She's like, I completely forgot that she was like that. Because during the season, we just kind of, you let that stuff slide. That doesn't get to you. You're all focused on your collective goal. and that's a skill. As you say, that's a skill that you have to develop as a unit to be able to get to the point where you want to be.
Yeah. Learning what matters and what doesn't, I think, is huge in terms of if a player said something to you or looks at you funny or hangs out with your best friend and you don't want her to. I mean, just learning what matters and what is crucial and what you need to let go and let slide and move past, I think, has been a learning experience for all of us, including me. Because as a coach, hey, do I really, like for me, I think going back to what you said earlier about, now that I'm the head coach, kind of, things that I've learned in terms of being in that position. For me, one of the big things is, what do I value? You can say you value something, but until you're in the position where you have to defend it, you really decide what you value when you have the right to enforce it. And so for me, one of the big things was, just to give an example, some of the players came into a practice and one of my players told one of the PE teachers, who's the softball coach, that she just woke up from a nap because she's a senior. And so I guess they had like a break or something. And so she came into practice and she was dragging and some of the other players were dragging. And I wasn't really a fan and I had never really said anything about it before, but we had a pretty intense practice for them. And the following day, actually at the end of practice, I said, part of the standard for this team, because to us, the word that we use is standard, and, what's the standard and how do we meet the standard? Mm-hmm. And part of the standard for this team is it matters how you walk into practice. So, I care about you before you come into the gym. I care what's going on in your life and what's happening, whether you had a bad day, rough test, whatever it is. But when you come into the gym, like there's a way in which you come into the gym. And until that point, I didn't really realize how much I cared about how you walk into the gym. And having to defend that and say that and saying that ever since that point, I mean, my kids come into the gym a certain way and they're excited, they're ready, and they do the setup. And it's been a noticeable difference just because I didn't really realize how much I cared until I was presented with it. And so someone unknowingly challenged it. So,
yeah. Well, and that's a lesson I think that a lot of us need to learn is kids don't know what's going on in your head. Right. A lot of times they think they do. Right. Usually they're completely wrong.
Yeah.
But, if you expect them to understand without you communicating it to them, what you expect of them, it's probably not going to work out too well for you. They're not there. They're not on the same level as you. You shouldn't expect them to be on the same level as you, to be thinking about the same things.
And I've definitely had to learn that because being my first time as a head coach and being at the high school level, I think there is kind of, especially when you're around good programs, there is kind of you just kind of accept that certain things are the norm, and that's not the case. You have to build that, you have to work it, you have to practice it to get to where it is the norm. So for me, I mean, I can definitely admit that there are times where I probably should have said something sooner, or I should have been more clear up front. But I'm thankful that at least I had the courage and the motivation to say something when it needed to be addressed. But I've definitely learned that if I value it, I need to express that to where they understand clearly that I value it and that it does matter, and not just assume that it does or assume that they know what I want when I haven't told them.